I would like to welcome everybody out to the General Grand Council's Cryptic Mason International's monthly educational. I would like to introduce our speaker today, Brother Randy Sanders. Brother Randy Sanders and his wife, Elena, if I said that wrong, I apologize, live near St. Louis, Missouri. He earned a bachelor's degree in chemistry with an emphasis in biochemistry, and he works in telecom IT management. Brother Randy's Masonic bio includes past lodge education officer. I hope I said this right. He's the founder of the Wentzville Lodge Book Club and is the venerable past master of his AMD Council. Randy serves as the Missouri Grand Lodge Education Committee, co-librarian of the Scottish Rite Valley of St. Louis, clerk for the Academy of Reflection through the Valley of Guthrie, and is a facilitator for the Masonic Legacy Society. Randy is a founding administrator for Refracted Light, full contributor to Midnight Freemasons, and an international presenter on esoteric topics. Randy hosts an ongoing weekly international Masonic virtual happy hour on Friday evenings, and Randy is an accomplished home chef. So I hope someday he will make me some food. He's a certified barbecue judge and raises great Pyrenees dogs, and he enjoys philosophy. Having said that, I'm going to turn the time over to Brother Randy Sanders.
Thank you very much. Goodness, it makes me sound very busy. Let's see. Right. Okay. Can everybody see that okay now?
Yes, sir.
All right. I want to thank everybody and say hello to all you brothers and folks for allowing me to spend time with you today. It really is my honor and privilege to speak with you. I want to give credit to Matt Parker, whom you know through his excellent work through North Carolina Masonic Research Society. He piqued my interest in this subject of sacred spaces. Brother Matt, myself, several others had long conversations over, let's go with beverages of choice, around this subject, many evenings. Goodness, I really appreciate his advice and support. I'd also like to give out a shout out to Missouri, New York, and Oklahoma, specifically York Rite companions who inspired me, such as Robert Davis and Clyde Schofield and Brian Reagan, Pierce Vaughn, Muhammad Yatim, Moises Gomez. Good Lord, there's so many. More locally, our current and past most illustrious Grand Masters, that'd be Mike Smith, who's on with us today, Don McCormick, Wayne Fryer, Aaron Schumacher. These gentlemen continually focus towards education, high quality meetings, innovative merit and retention programs. I mean, this is awesome stuff. They inspire me with their work and dedication, and so do you guys, everybody on here right now, each of you. I'm grateful to be this small part of this giant fraternity. Now, I only speak for myself, and today I do not represent any Grand Lodge, any established jurisdictions. This is my research, my opinions, my thoughts. I use humor to convey some messages and never disrespect nor insult any jurisdictions, people. I hold Freemasonry in the very highest regard. And even if I poke fun here and there at, the person's holding office, I still respect both the person and the office. As you can probably see, I like memes and pictures to use as symbols, maybe allegorical teaching opportunities. Now, these are either my pictures or those found in public areas of the internet. If there's any slide I'm using that needs to be reviewed or content or copyright, please contact me offline. Because we are discussing sacred spaces, I would like to begin with a quick and quiet prayer. I would like for you to begin. I'm going to ask you to put both feet on the ground and assume an upright position, or if you'd rather, any position you use for prayer or meditation. Let's do that now. Initially, we're just going to focus on becoming quiet, bring our attention to our breath. Let's all together take 3 deep breaths, each one allowing us to become more relaxed. Let any tension simply drop away. First breath, second breath. Now I would like for each of us to pray silently for just a few moments and invoke the blessing of deity. We do this regularly when we meet, but we're going to do this again. We're going to do this to connect both with deity and to ground ourselves for the purposes of this presentation and following discussion. So let us now pray silently for a few moments. Amen. And as we open our eyes, I invite you to look at the world through the joyful, playful, and wondrous eyes of our inner child. Let's walk through this presentation with a true wonder and awe at the work of the great architect and what that might mean to each of us. That's kind of why we're here, right? So I think a sacred space means any place sanctified toward deity. We find both natural and man-made examples in most areas of the earth. I also like the definition I found on encyclopedia.com. A sacred place is, first of all, a defined place, a space distinguished from other spaces. The rituals that a people either practice at a place or direct toward it mark its sacredness and differentiate it from other defined spaces. To understand the character of such spaces, Jonathan Z. Smith has suggested the helpful metaphor of sacred space as a focusing lens. Focusing lens. I thought that was pretty cool. So this picture is Aksum in Ethiopia at the Church of St. Mary of Zion. So what? This is where it is said the Ark of the Covenant resides. That's kind of cool. Sacred means different things to different people with one binding concept. Its purpose and focus is toward deity. I respect all sacred spaces, and I ask an open mind toward each of us looking at something sacred to somebody else. I'm going to pull texts from different methods of spirituality here and there, and we're going to consider the depth of meaning rather than dismiss any source because the author or sources might practice differently, right? The Earth is our sacred space inside this macrocosm of the solar system, the galaxy, and the universe, right? But maybe even the Earth may be a bit large for our minds to quickly assimilate. Maybe we break it down into areas of the planet we enjoy. These areas stimulate the senses. One way of looking at sacred spaces might include naturally occurring beautiful places. Those of us that travel or even simply watch TV witness the beauty and wonder of creation. We identify with certain special places as indeed sacred to us and to all who witness it. While this picture is simply a stock photo from the Sequoia National Forest, I backpacked in an adjacent forest among these giant trees. It was a beautiful and magnificent experience for which I am truly grateful. Moses was commanded to take off his sandals on sacred ground. That's in both Exodus 3:1 and chapter of Taha, verse 12. Why take off his sandals? Several theories exist throughout Judaism and Islam. Most come to the conclusion that the space was to be regarded as sacred, so the act was to reinforce that condition of a sacred space. Another more esoteric theory is that it's based on the importance of grounding the feet for receiving guidance. We see this in many religions around the world where shoes are taken off when entering a deeply sacred space. I got a couple of questions for you to contemplate while we're going through this. Where did you learn that certain mountains were holy? Where did you learn a place might be considered sacred? Because these things you know, but have you considered where you learned that and why? What led you to that knowledge? The picture here is the altar at the house of the temple. And I want you to note there are 6 different volumes of sacred law on this altar. Right? It's a big deal that it's not just one, but there we have multiple here. It's respect. Now, Gareth Knight, in his book, Magic in the Western Mind, mentions Stonehenge and other hinges, ley lines, psychic centers. We're just now beginning to understand through science how the Earth's magnetic field truly works. 100 years ago, there were theories as to gravity waves and their effect on atmospheric conditions. Doctoral research was ongoing in physics and meteorology regarding gravity waves only 20, 30 years ago. We now know these waves exist, and ongoing research may help us in areas like tornado and storm predictions. For the purposes of this presentation, I want to demonstrate invisible nature that still affects each of us in different ways. Now let's slow down and apply that same movement of the gravitational and magnetic forces on the deep surface of the Earth. We think a few miles down into the Earth, what is the impact of the geological tectonic shifts? That's where the plates come together, forming mountain ranges or canyons over 1 million years or so. And considering the billions of years the planet has evolved, as its crust hardens, it makes sense to me that gravity and other forces would polarize and align mineral deposits in the ground, that some elements and compounds of varying densities would be concentrated and segregated. Consider the pressure of the earthquakes and volcanoes compressing over all these years carbon to create diamonds in a crystalline structure. With all that in mind, the concept of ley lines and energy centers, that kind of makes a whole lot more sense to me. So what did I say about hinge or hinges? That's not natural. That's man-made. Well, once we got past the concept of an area or place being naturally sacred, we somehow concluded mankind should improve upon it. Now, the early versions of this were simply setting up some landscaping gardens to refine that space. A circle of rocks called a hinge is a good example of man making a circumpunct. That is, the point within the circle. It also meant that what was inside the circle could be viewed as sacred, thus defining a duality type system of philosophy. In its most basic sense, inside the circle, circumscribed, outside the circle, non-circumscribed or uncircumscribed. Now, duality is really a different topic from this presentation, and Masonic philosophy, but the reference is important to us as Masons. Stonehenge and other hinges have astrological and spiritual significance, which are also beyond the scope of this presentation, but worth taking a look at. Now, Stonehenge, that one's kind of famous, right? Stone circles, typically with a depressed internal area, are often simply understood as holy or sacred. So let's look at Avebury, which is recognized as the largest stone circle in the world. Those are buildings and houses inside that. Maybe it could shed light on the many other stone circles and other sacred sites in the area. I'll let you take a look at that picture for a second. Pyramids and certain other stone structures are famous for funerary sites, worship sites, sacrificial sites. We reference the formative structure of King Solomon's temple from essentially a giant traveling tent. Remember that the tribes were nomadic at that time, and the lack of iron tools striking stone at the building site goes back to Old Testament teachings that altars were to be made from loose available stone and not worked stone. The symbolic implications of this are numerous. The rough stones, the rough ashlars, are for sacrifice, while the hewn or finished stones are for building. Maybe the hewn stones being built elsewhere and fitted into the temple, that is your body, your being, alludes to other internal alchemy. Maybe it refers to making use of outside influences to shape your personal ashlar before it's fitted into the temple. Let's circle back to this during discussion. Now, perspective is everything, and perception is our reality. On the left, we see a very simple, large carved tomb, and on the right, the exquisite Taj Mahal. Now, which one of those has more meaning to you? On the left is a dear brother standing in front of the tomb of Hiram, king of Tyre, or Hiram, king of Tyre. Now, which sacred space in those pictures has more meaning to you? Pretty cool, huh? Now, what's to say here? The operative and speculative Masons both do beautiful work no matter where in the world they may live. And I just got to point out Philadelphia Masonic Temple because, well, I'm a fan. I love it. It's beautiful. So what makes these spaces sacred? Separation, distinguished from whatever we term the outside world, typically an altar of some manner, even if it's minimal. Window dressing, the other parts of the room or building or area. Beauty, ritual intent, invocation of deity. Most importantly, how do I personally tune into or connect with that sacred space? In some cases, it just is. Here in the picture is the cave city of Vargia, Georgia in Eastern Europe. I would call this an amazing place, an amazing sacred place, wouldn't you? I mean, that's just awe-inspiring to see this. Let's shift over a little bit. If we're discussing sacred spaces, why limit ourselves to the tangible or physical? We already saw gravity waves as an invisible force of nature. Why does so much Masonic and other ritual revolve around time? Brother, what is the hour? Or 12 times strike the iron tongue of time. What's the first working tool presented to the new brother? In my jurisdiction, it's a 24-inch gauge. That's not a secret. Consider this for a moment. The very first working tool explained to brethren, well, at least in my jurisdiction, gives us a lesson about time. Time itself is sacred. How we use our time here on earth becomes a lesson to ourselves in living within the divine or connecting with deity. Let's talk about some lessons more specific from the cryptic ritual. Mankind seems obsessed throughout the history of secret spaces. Here I've shown a cutaway representation of the two hidden chambers of the Great Giza Pyramid, but we cryptic Masons typically refer to the symbolism of King Solomon's temple. Okay? I show this only as a parallel in that hidden spaces often have religious significance. They are designed to both teach secrecy and symbolize the journey to reach the sacred space. Symbolize the journey? Yes. The winding stairs, Jacob's ladder, long, narrow passages with multiple veils, levels, arches, being led with a hoodwink. These all represent the journey, not necessarily the destination. They represent the destination too, but we have to work to get there. All the lessons to which I'm speaking occur in the Blue Lodge degrees. Okay? That's why there's no higher degree than Master Mason. Few ever achieve it in a lifetime, but the moral dedication and pursuit is worthwhile in the eyes of deity. It's all allegorically hidden in ritual, all of it. Now, the council degrees create a bridge to learning the deeper meanings of lessons previously communicated. The degrees, with proper study and contemplation, accelerate our learning by giving us different perspectives to the lessons of the Blue Lodge and to the Royal Arch. Now, in this case, let us consider one portion of one degree. In the historical lecture of Select Master, on page 54 of the cipher I'm using, we come across a story of Zeba discovering a secret work going on in the craft in a hidden sacred space. The secret work he witnessed was something to which he was not previously acquainted. You might say that Zebud's feelings were hurt that he wasn't in on the reindeer games. And he complains to King Solomon. King Solomon had the perfect answer. Be content, friend Zebud. The time will come when the door shall be opened for your reception. Meaning that when the temple should be completed, he should receive the Master Mason degree. That's pretty much what he said, more or less. Let's state that another way. Once Zebud completed his years of working on controlling his passions, and then after he completed his knowledge of each of the 15 parts of the winding stairs, only then would he have earned the right to begin learning to be a real Master Mason. Ooh, that's kind of heavy. Let's cross-reference that secret work mentioned with a different part of the ritual. I'm not giving anything away here. We have an excellent source in our various fellowcraft lectures and letter G that directly relates to both cryptic degrees. Why aren't we using it? After all, something many Masons miss in the lecture here is the importance of learning and working the fellowcraft in order to contemplate and pray daily for greater understanding. It's in the degrees. Go back and look. I challenge you. Go back and look. Look at your lectures. Look at your degrees. Contemplate and pray daily. You're going to see it multiple times. You may have never even thought about it before, but it's there. Every degree, everything is saying contemplate and pray daily. Another important thing to consider is the York Rite degrees teach you the details that will help your actual work, preparing us to eventually become a real Master Mason. Wilmshurst, Mackey, Steinmetz, Pike, good Lord, all of them, and so many more past generations of Masonic authors reference that contemplation as the great work. Some go so far as to relate the last step of the winding stairs as putting your feet ready to step out into the universe. That's my paraphrase. But go prove me wrong. Go look and prove me wrong. Note my subtle push for you to read more Masonic literature. Maybe not so subtle. Zaybud, even as a well-known and respected fellow craft, was not prepared to become a real master mason yet. And here we are learning more lessons of the fellow craft in the cryptic degrees. What does that mean to you when I say it like that? Now, in this slide, I am going to read again and walk through with you. Creating your own physical space in your home. Clearing clutter, work towards simplicity, comfort. I go with a connectedness to nature personally in my office and my study here. This is a focus on the 5 elements and the 5 senses. I have air, earth, fire, water, spirit, or metal, depending on what you look at as the 5th element. I have a background in Chinese Kung Fu and Asian philosophy, so metal would be the 5th element that I would be looking at if that's the direction I'm looking at. But spirit in the Western traditions would be the counterpart to that. In actuality, it's the same. Your 5 senses correlate to a certain part of a lecture in fellowcraft, and I'll leave that to you to go think about and contemplate upon. Cleansing and purification can be sage, burning sage or other incense, candles, bells, singing bowls. I got a couple of really nice singing bowls as gifts recently. They're beautiful, and I'm very appreciative. You know, I hadn't used them before, but I do now, and they're awesome. The LBRP or other ritual from other traditions outside of Freemasonry, those are pretty popular for cleansing and purification. I got to tell you what I use: prayer. Just prayer, contemplation and prayer. I burn a little bit of incense on occasion. I've got some going now, but prayer is where you get your real cleansing and purification. Creating the space through ritual. Now, again, my ritual is prayer, but I'm also familiar with Sufi dancing or walking the Bagua. Bagua is a martial art, walking the Bagua circle. But we as Masons have something very powerful, and we can open and close the lodge in our head. If you're working on your ritual certifications, then you're going to be able to go through as the master and open and close the lodge all the way through all of the parts. That's powerful, because what that does is create that sacred space inside your head and inside the room at the same time. One of the things that I've talked about is the physical altar. And setting up your own physical altar is not something that, I mean, you don't have to set up a dedicated altar and open the Bible and set the square and compasses. But if that's what you want to do, think about that as the point is the dogma of the repetition, that you constantly work on transitioning your own consciousness by meditation or prayer. And you're transitioning this consciousness through dogma of repetition. Now, from the Chinese or the Eastern side of the house, the transition of consciousness is emptiness, stillness, sinking, and then softness. And once you can truly achieve the sinking and softness, there's a really cool thing that starts happening, and your body starts transforming too. There's a really good health benefit to the meditation and prayer. And I say prayer, absolutely, prayer is a meditation. Let's go back to opening the lodge inside your own head for a moment. We're going to create that sacred space during meditation or prayer. You are the point within the circumpunct. Corinthians, don't you know you are the temple of God? Or the King James Version, know ye not that ye are the temple of God, and that the Spirit of God dwelleth within you? Okay, we say it, but are you taking that and making it your own? Most religions, philosophies, and even mystery schools have at minimum a mention of this concept, or of you being a portion of deity or directly connected to deity through your body as the temple, the spark of consciousness being a spark of one little tiny spark of something like the sun, right? P.D. Newman once mentioned to me, if you're doing middle pillar type exercises or meditations, you are the center point for that banishing ritual, right? The one that we all know about, most of us. So we organize our psyche, our consciousness, our self, our inner being through meditation on Masonic and religious symbols, or mandalas, if you want to go with the some of the Eastern ways of looking at. We internalize, we connect with deity. That's our focus. That's what we're doing. We're trying to get closer to God. That's what we do. We're trying to be better people because of our faith and our work. We focus on calm, connecting the breath, strengthening our internal feelings, or connecting what may be called, I don't know, your aura or energy, depending on who knows what. But expanding that energy to the confines of the room and maintaining that connected feeling. How many times have you been in a lodge where it just feels different from outside? And it's supposed to. And it feels good for good reason, because we are doing good work. Israel Orgardi once said, as part of the initiation process, it is necessary to sanctify your Malkuth and elevate it to the higher consciousness of Kether, as it is to bring down the Godhead into the Holy Kingdom. That's a whole lot of words. So what? Again, allegory, naming conventions, details. What are we doing? In the initiation process, we're sanctifying our lower self, our what we're walking around, and we're trying to connect to deity. We pray that we connect to deity. And that's about as powerful as you can possibly get. Now, creating a sacred space internally during prayer or meditation can be as easy as opening the lodge in your mind through the ritual, going through each of the officer chairs. Consider the possibility of the outer temple being the room or space you occupy, or outside around you, the walking around out in public. A middle chamber might be the body, or possibly the lodge room or something, right? But it's something a little bit more defined and refined. And then sanctum sanctorum, the third level of the mind, and the deeper thought and the deeper aspects of your self. And then we close the lodge. We ground ourselves. We return again to mix with the outside world. Can an automobile become a sacred space? Now, PD and I had some interesting conversations on this too. And he once mentioned to me that Benedictine monks teach that the rope used to tie a monk's robes creates the sacred circle that singles him out from baseness. Are you guys already cluing into cable toes? But the point is that the rope tied around a monk's robes is a sacred circle to that monk. and the circle that we just tied our aprons would be very similar. Interesting. Interesting to me. So yeah, I think that you can meditate or pray anywhere. So yes, a car can be a sacred space. Now, should a sacred space remain sacred, or should it be returned to nature? Brethren, you are now about to quit this sacred retreat of friendship and virtue to mix again with the world. Now, that first sentence is the closing charge from the Masonic Manual, a pocket companion for the initiated, compiled and arranged by Robert McCoy in 1867. I'm not giving away anything that hasn't been out in the public for 150 years. Note that all jurisdictions use, not all jurisdictions use this closing charge. It was made public and it's in many monitors of public ceremony. I'm not revealing any secrets with that, but it's worth thinking about. Should your space remain sacred, or should you just return it and mix again with the world? It's really your choice. Maybe the most fundamental lesson is grounding after any personal ritual, whether it be prayer or meditation or whatever. It can be done as simply as walking barefoot on grass or leaning up against a large hardwood tree for a few moments, running cool water over your hands, or maybe just focusing on recycling excess energy back to the divine. There's a lot of different ways of grounding, but it's important that you do. Some questions that I want you to think about as we move forward. Do you think of time as its own sacred space? What's your favorite sacred space? When you create a sacred space, and we all do, are we conscious of it? Are we thinking about it as we do it? Are we putting some effort into it? Some answers are going to be yes, some answers are going to be no, and that's okay, but I want you to think about it. How would we seal that space away from the outside world or tile? Should a sacred space remain sacred or returned to nature? Again, that depends, you know. If it's a lodge, I kind of like that lodge room to remain sacrosanct, right? I like it to be that way. If it's my home office and I'm going to be taking conference calls from work later in the day, maybe I just return that to nature and open it back up to whatever it is right now, right? So there's options, and I want you to think about how that applies to you. So in closing, I really appreciate the kind invitation extended to me to come talk to you. And I really appreciate the time you've given to me. I'm very grateful for it. Please feel free to reach out to me with any questions or comments. And with that, I'm done.